Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining Megan and I and Bond for a little bit of special edition around the topic Rethinking Payment Loyalty, new norms, new currencies, new expectations. Megan and I are pretty excited about this. We're gonna walk you through some content over the next 45 minutes to an hour. We really appreciate you joining, and I know that Nancy had reached out to many of you, so thanks for leaning in and figuring out what's next in this exciting space. We're going to go through some things this morning. Meg, do you want to say hi so people, I think your video shows the whole time through, so maybe just, there's only me and you, so I don't know that we'd ever get confused.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're really excited to be here, and we hope the next hour is one really well spent with some dynamic and interesting content that you can take back to your workday.
Okay. And so with that, the market intel subscription that Megan and I are going to walk you through, these are excerpts from several of the recent volumes that we've put out to clients who subscribe. We've pulled together a kind of curated set around some of these topics and some of these territories. By way of introduction, one of the things I want to also call out for your attention is as we go through some of these slides, I mean, they're intended to be, in many cases, kind of self-consumed. Megan and I also host a 1-hour Q&A each month with some of our subscribers and their teams. There's a lot of you joining today. Thank you for that. Those sessions tend to be anywhere between 20 to 100 people, and people from all different parts of your organizations. People tuning in to understand the new expectations of customer experience, of how customers engage and want to lean in with brands, and what creates customer loyalty or loyalty outcomes in different kind of cohorts and pockets of customers. You'll maybe know us from some of the work that we've done over the last decade plus one very strange year's worth of data that is perpetually published in the loyalty report. And while the loyalty report looks like a kind of annual thing, truth being told, underneath it is a very rich data set. And we publish once a year annually some of the baseline data, but all year long, that data is refreshed and evergreen, renewed as each one of our clients who leans in and boosts for their own purposes, we get a read all year round. And you will see call outs from the loyalty report all the way through some of the market intel where we're kind of substantiating or adding evidence or corroborating some of what we see in the marketplace. The market intel subscription tends to be a roundup, secondary research style of the trends, the rumors, the pilots, the MVPs that are popping up in these territories. And some of the loyalty report data, some of the data that lives in our data lake underneath tends to kind of punctuate it all the way through. And so you'll see call outs, and predominantly that's where that data is sourced from. Meg, do you want to maybe walk people through, how we've set up the kind of 3 chapters for the time together today?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. What we've seen in the marketplace, and we're keeping track of, as Sean said, of trends, of what's happening, of what we're hearing maybe through the grapevine. What we set up for today is really a conversation around some of the new experiences and expectations that we're seeing from consumers today around their loyalty experience. We're going to talk about some of the new currencies. So it's not just about points anymore. There are so many formal and informal ways to engage your customers through loyalty offerings. We're going to talk to what some of those new currencies are and how we're seeing them come to life and what impact we're seeing them have. And then we're going to dive deep into the payments innovation. We have seen a ton of innovation in the payment space, I would say over the past, 6 to 12 months, and it only seems to be getting faster. So we're going to talk and unpack some of the things that we've seen happening in that space as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think we could spend probably an hour on any one of those topics. We will try and hit the tips of the waves and give people a bit of sense of where maybe they should double click and lean into these topics. A little legal disclaimer and a bit about us. Everything that you're seeing, we are gathering from publicly available sources, triangulating different data sets. Meg and her team do a lot of work to look through annual reports, sift through the transcripts of earnings calls to connect dots on other things that are sort of popping up publicly in the market. Okay, why don't we get into the new experience?
Yeah, there's no question. Expectations have changed. And what your consumers are looking for these days really start to pivot around things like confidence and safety and the experience expectations that they have coming out into this new norm, this new world. So loyalty programs are really a fantastic opportunity for us to identify, enable, and give access to ensure that those experiences really are meeting the needs of your consumers. And we're going to walk you through some of the examples that we see happening in market. So we're going to start with travel. Travel is back. FOMO is real. We are back to traveling again. And it's interesting to see how brands are refreshing and reintroducing themselves to market, especially around their loyalty value propositions as we return to travel. So we were really interested to see solutions like subscriptions start to become more prominent. The example we've got here is around TripAdvisor's Plus Travel subscription, a new introduction for them where they really are taking advantage of, their previous asset around their brand about having all of this confidence and trust from customers, using them as a source of validation, as a proof point that, the quality of their experience will be strong if they engage with them. And they're actually turning that into a subscription service where it's more focused on them being present with you throughout your journey. So not just the place that you go to validate, but the place that you actually go throughout your journey to ensure that you're going to have the kind of experience you're hoping for.
And Meg, you and I have joked about just how much airtime I think Expedia bought during the Olympics to get across their version of this same kind of proposition, where it's confidence that they're selling, right? Like, I think there's still a lot of insecurity in the world. There's a lot of unsureness about different forms of travel. How far do I venture? Will the rules change while I'm gone? Having the insurance policy in your pocket that says, they're with me, they'll make good, they'll, help resolve anything that happens, I think is an interesting pivot to, what was the language you used? Not just being this sort of like conduit to find the trip, but actually like a companion to go on the trip with.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing an interesting pivot there in that pre-pandemic, booking your all-inclusive or your flight was a really comfortable thing to do over OTAs. But if you're booking that dream vacation to Italy, you actually wanted to talk to a travel agent. And what they're proposing here is we will be that on-demand travel agent with you through your whole journey, that you can have that confidence in no matter what travel you are booking.
Yeah. And I think, the role that travel has always played in the payments landscape it's a major part of, portfolios that are travel related, credit cards, et cetera. So when we see these services coming out, I think you and I are leaning a little bit forward to say, probably these services get aligned to particular card portfolios at a certain time where several of those you're carrying this Chase card, you're carrying that Visa in particular, et cetera, then you get access to TripAdvisor Plus, or you get access to what Virgin's got going on here. You want to describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so sure. So Virgin has also gone through a big relaunch, and they've introduced their latest version of Lucy. And Sean and I do joke about how many female names we're going to go through for all of these virtual
Alexa.
virtual devices. But this update really includes the opportunity to interact contactlessly for any kind of engagement you need while you're traveling or staying with Virgin. And so they're really focused on this being your personal, and they call it here, your comfort assistant. So once again, all about confidence, all about safety. If you want to change the lights in your room, you can just tell Lucy to change your lights. If you want to order room service, you can just tell Lucy what you want to order. So it's really about enhancing that experience by making it as seamless and efficient for the guest as you possibly can. But in doing so, it's also a confidence and safety enhancement for them as well.
Yeah, this is all kind of self-servy right now. Hop, skip, and a jump with a little ML and AI and get some personalization going there. I feel like Lucy's going to be like, "Hey, Megan, would you like me to send that welcome drink up to, like it'll start to be suggestive the way that we're used to in other forms of CRM, that play out digitally. This one could play out physically in the hotel, which I think is neat. Let's talk a little bit about how other brands have shifted, where we see, maybe some differences in the expression of customer loyalty. What do you think about Adidas here?
Yeah, so this is a new sort of aspect that we're tracking within the loyalty report, which has to do with brand is loyal to me. And this is a really interesting pivot that we've seen over, I would say, the past 18 months, where members aren't just happy to be one in a mass of members. They're really looking to brands to say, are you seeing and recognizing me? Am I valuable to you in a way that means you're going to prioritize your relationship with me? And so that's where we're seeing this demonstration of TLR data about, I'm loyal to program. Yeah, I like the value I get out of the program. I'm loyal to brand, even more strongly, because the strongest element here is I feel the brand is loyal to me. And what Adidas has done an amazing job of here is reaching out to create connection with their members, finding reasons for the members to engage with them that feel super relevant and personalized. They're not about discounts. They're about access. They're about experiences. They're about opportunities to influence what the brand is going to do next. And through that experience in the Creators Club, they're actually seeing this incredible response back where their customers truly feel like the brand is loyal to them.
Yeah. And that reciprocity, that notion of sort of extending that feeling of reciprocity, even maybe in advance. A lot of loyalty programs come to market, and I think you and I feel the same about this. Brands are like, yeah, I've got a loyalty program. And you've got customers who are like, well, great, but I've been a loyal customer for a long time. And there's this idea of reciprocity, or the expression we're using here is the brand is loyal to me, feels like it needs to account for maybe a history of my customership that started long before the invention of said loyalty program or formalized loyalty program. We also wanted to sharpen, and full disclosure here, we've done a little work for each of these brands, but look at the difference in a landscape that is increasingly saturated with loyalty programs, how different the kind of posture could be. So loyalty mechanics underpinning both of these things. Creators Club, as Megan describes, a lot more about the experiences, leaning into the brand, participating in the brand, helping to guide where the brand goes next. It's got a series of unlocks. So there's a point system in Creators Club. Nike, on the other hand, doesn't have some of those kind of legacy loyalty things like a point system. Now neither Adidas has a redeemable point system, which is what is more common in like payment landscapes in particular. But I wanted to call out, you can have very different expressions for two businesses that look like they're in exactly the same line of business, very different mechanics, very different expressions in the way that their customers lean in, also gets to be more adherent to what Nike is about, a little bit more athletic forward, a little bit more product centric, versus what Adidas is posturing around, which is lifestyle oriented and leaning into that. Okay, speaking of sneakers and drops and getting things fast, our friends at Amazon.
Our friends at Amazon, all about time. They're entirely focused on time. And I have to say, I think it's fascinating that they've actually managed to quantify the value of the time that they have saved their Prime members. They claim it's $126 billion worth of time. But what we're seeing Amazon do, they've shifted our expectation around time. They have moved us from, waiting 3 to 4 days for something to be delivered, to expect it in 2 days, to expect it next day, to now expect it same day. I mean, do we really need it same day? Well, we now feel we do. We now feel justified in saying same day delivery is our need. And they continue to expand on that focus of time by offering you things like furniture assembly service. So you're going to order it through us. Hey, we'll build the cabinet for you. And if it turns out you don't like the cabinet, we're actually going to take it apart and take it away with us so that you don't have to worry about the time spent during, managing that return. So they've really focused in on this, and they're continuing to evolve their space and their platform with things like pay with your palm. An extension of Amazon Go where you can, now pay at many places just by scanning your hand and not even having to pull out your phone. Apparently, future facing, pulling out your phone will be too significant an effort.
So passe, very passe.
But from a financial standpoint, it does lead us to focus in on card on file. Like I think, and I think we'll talk to this a little more in some upcoming slides, when you have solutions like this focused on time, they are often linked to a card on file solution. And so as, a credit card, you want to be thinking about how do you become that card on file? What is it about your value proposition that creates the stickiness for you to be selected as that card on file as we look for more and more seamless payment solutions?
Yeah, there's a tension here, right? And I know that when we polled some of the audience today coming in, being first in wallet is a major priority. As Maegan's describing this, I mean, the card is getting pushed further and further out of sight. It's further and further out of mind. But the regular usage, the routines that are built around these kinds of interactions, whether Palm takes off or not, the point is still true that the tension between it getting sort of like more invisible, less coming out of my wallet and into the real world, physically incarnated, but having way more at stake on it being the one on file, the one that gets used regularly, is a big deal. There's a consolidation of purchase volume into these kinds of transactions, as opposed to a lot of splintered individual physical card present transactions. And so I think this is a major influence, Amazon in particular, but e-commerce and the world we've lived through for the last 20 months is drastically changing the speed that consolidation is happening at.
Absolutely. And reaching back to some of the other comments we were making at opening around confidence and safety, we're seeing what we would call alternate currencies of loyalty. So beyond points, solutions like shop by appointment, introduced here by J. Crew, also, offered by Lululemon and a number of other brands. Prior to pandemic, these were operationally challenging benefits to put forward, and now they seem like they're essential to doing business.
Yeah, we would beg to have customers at this point make an in-store appointment, put themselves digitally in line to come into the store. All those things, like you said, seemed such far off ideas, just 20 short months ago.
And so these really aren't points-driven value constructs, but they absolutely are loyalty value constructs in that, the ability to offer up some of these assurances around respecting my time because I have an appointment, around convenience because I know exactly that I'm going to get service and someone's going to be available for me, but also around safety and that I know protocols will have been followed upon my arrival and my products can be waiting for me in the fitting room to try on. These are all ways in which we are enhancing the experience and the value associated with our brand as a result of offering up some of these solutions.
So one of the things is Maegan and I are sharpening here, like the different currencies, time, convenience and ease and all of those things that are playing into the new loyalty landscape. It's not to say that there's not a role for points or points don't do a certain job. That's true, but it doesn't do all the job. And you've got to be mindful and thoughtful about the other currencies that customers are chasing. Sometimes a discount, sometimes a dollar figure, sometimes a point earn or redemption moment, yes. But some of these other things are major drivers of how they're spending. And so we're going to keep flitting kind of in and out of payment territories. There are lessons to be learned in retail. There are lessons to be learned from CPG and hard good manufacturers who have pivoted to a direct to consumer orientation. But we will continue to bring it back to that payment landscape. Let's dive into this appetite that's been demonstrated for values as opposed to value.
Yeah, we've definitely seen this sharpen of focus, people paying attention in ways that maybe we hadn't before, and people really deciding that it's important for them to make decisions about who they're going to do business with based on alignment of values. So we're seeing this combination of value and values begin to line up, and people are more and more making decisions about their purchase behavior based on whether they see that brand as reflecting good values to them or not. And so loyalty is beginning well before the transaction, and people are dialing in on these decisions much earlier than maybe they were prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch on a few that would be logical for people in this arena. That data wokeness comment is a real thing too. I think that the exclamation mark that Apple has put on things in recent months, the transparency and levels of transparency that customers have come to expect in other categories around their data and the footprint that they're leaving digitally, is part and parcel of what's going on in this kind of blossoming of territory. I love this one. You know that I love this one.
I know that you love this one.
This is the all singing, all dancing show, because I think when people, used to think about involving their corporate social responsibility initiatives, or now ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues finding their way into the customer value proposition, I remember looking at this one going, okay, they're doing the taste good, good for you. It's got no aluminum. The wild deodorant here. It's got no aluminum, no plastic in it. It's a reusable container. Even the cartridges are entirely biodegradable. The thing comes as a subscription, so I don't have to brain space think about, do I need deodorant or not? And I just thought, this is a layering of health and wellness, environmentally conscious, modern subscription that I don't have to think about, which everybody should hear as also a card on file that has an automatic kind of renewable purchase volume tied to it. This is the triple threat, I think, of these new values-based currencies just supplanting value. I'm sure, I'm paying way too much for deodorant, but I feel like a better human being for doing it. I feel like it's living up to the things that I can do and control about some of these gigantic topics. And I think, brands are starting to say, I can't just check a box. If I'm really going to live true to this, I got to be able to check 4 boxes deep, because customers can smell the facade if it's not all the way there.
Yeah, no question. Customers are looking at, is it good for me? Is the product safe? Does it feel comfortable and quality? But is it good for the environment? And I'm willing to spend more if I feel those criteria are being met, and then add in, the benefit of breast cancer research, et cetera. And all of a sudden, yes, it's absolutely worth that additional spend for me.
Yeah.
And we're continuing to see those values really drive behaviors across all different channels. And so, if we look at what Shopify offered with their Shop Pay solution and the opportunity to do carbon offsets with your purchase, and these could go both ways. This could be, the consumer actually choosing to carbon offset with their purchase. That was an option as you were doing your checkout on the Pay app, or it could be the business offering the consumer the benefit of, and your purchase will be carbon offset by us. And so once again, as we're having all these packages show up at our door, we're loving the convenience and the time that it's saving us, but we're starting to think about, well, what's the impact of all of these trucks, of all of these packages being shipped around? And here's a way to say, we know there's impact, but through this kind of value proposition, we will offer the offset of that. We will ensure that we're getting to neutral.
Yeah, and look at this. I mean, Shopify, the little engine that could, against Apple Pay and GPay and everything else, this audience would know all too well the jump ball that sits at the end of the checkout process when you are now being presented with, and we haven't even touched on buy now, pay later craziness, which we'll talk about in a second, all of the different ways that somebody can make a decision about how to pay. If one of them automatically comes with carbon offsetting, that value that I'm getting from the product mixed with the values endorsement I feel by choosing it is making a difference.
Yeah, and I think the Starbucks example is so interesting because it's such a combination of, it's expensive to buy properties that can have the footprint of a regular Starbucks location. And building those things, it's a lot of time and money. And they've actually figured out how to do it in a way that means they can pop up a location that is really a drive-through only, but in an efficient, sustainable, modular way to create this drive-through, which means they can both move into locations that have potential for demand, but they can't actually purchase, a significant footprint of property in. They can move those locations depending on where interest and traffic goes, and they can stamp it with the responsibility of being sustainable because these locations literally sort of pop up and pop down, kind of like Lego. So a great combination of benefits happening here where they can, with the focus of sustainability, they can actually create new opportunity for themselves amongst new locations and neighborhoods as they do so.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of serving other opportunities, maybe that haven't been as sharply focused on until now. I mean, Nike's commitment to, if you've got a body, you are an athlete. I mean, this move, what is this, Meg? Eight months old, maybe now. Nike has leaned hard into positioning around different aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that they are giving voice to a lot of different groups of customers and constituents that they've served for a long time.
Yeah. Just because you're a mom doesn't mean you're not an athlete. And so last fall, they launched their maternity line as a way to really respect that and sort of hit up against what has been a cultural taboo around, pregnant women and exercise and working out, and the fact that, you shouldn't overstrain yourself. Well, maybe those are outdated thoughts that we have.
I mean, that's a 1950s notion.
Maybe it is. With the past Olympics, we actually saw some great success from moms, with showing their daughters how to do it for the next generation.
Yeah.
And Lululemon, has really tried to make a significant pivot and, looked for opportunities to bring, health and wellness and inspiration to new segments in the market that maybe hadn't considered them before. And I think what we're talking about is that, customers and members really want to see themselves reflected in your brand. And so, you need to be thoughtful and purposeful about how you're reflecting who your brand shows up for. And these are some examples of brands who are ensuring that they are acknowledging and recognizing, customer groups that maybe didn't feel like they had the visibility before. And in doing so, they'll see a really impactful increase in engagement, not just from these customers, but from all customers who feel like the brand is doing the job.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, right? Like, it's not even just about these particular audiences. It's about the endorsement that they get from, dads who are proud of moms and of people of all body types who are like, there's room in here for all of us. And so I think, leaning in pretty meaningful ways is galvanizing audiences and bringing them to brands. Frankly, Lulu was not in this camp before. And so, there is a renewal or a refreshment going on around these values that's bringing big audience. These are not niche audience decisions. These are now mass audience issues and brand signals that are happening out of a product change. So let's think about that when we start talking payments in a second. Oh, we can't mention some sneaker providers and not other sneaker providers.
I think we might have mentioned Adidas earlier. But what we want to, I think, call out here is the fact that Adidas has put sustainability at the center of their business. And they've been doing this for a long period of time. This is not new. They've made commitments for the past many years to focus on sustainability. But what we're seeing them bring to market and the ways in which we're seeing that come to life, I think, is really resonating quite strongly. And so, the opportunity to have shoes made out of mushrooms that fully biodegrade when you're done with them, or shoes that are made out of a single piece of plastic that can continue to be renewed into a new pair of shoes when you're done with it. Also the opportunity to return your used product, and they will figure out the right way to recycle or reuse that product. And I love the idea. We're seeing more and more of it. I think our next market intel will report on this, but the rental side of things, and the fact that there's going to be times when what you're looking for is specific to a need that's seasonal. And so should you make a full purchase, or should you just
ownership? Or can I partially own that thing? Can I own it for a period of time? Can I own it for a period of time and give it back without my conscience sneaking in about like what happened to it afterwards, et cetera?
Yeah. So no question, we're seeing this sort of come to life. And I just have to call out that I love Snoop Dogg is still relevant. He's still an influencer.
Listen, I think we'll go fast through this. Partnerships around these territories are blossoming for a lot of brands who are wading into big announcements, big commitments. Meeting UN expectations is not just sort of the work of giant corporations. I think customers are expecting it at their local. They're expecting it in all different aspects of their life, and maybe to sharpen it really. For our audience today, I mean, supply chain sort of greenness or an understanding of the supply chain in financial services has not really been a popular thing. I think the introduction of some of these value propositions, whether it's the aspiration card here or what Mogo's up to, these are interesting, right? Do I get the sense that my interest that you're earning off of me as a customer will never be used for a business that I wouldn't invest in? And the issues of environment are wildly complex. Owning an electric car in Texas is different than owning an electric car in another state powered a different way. But customers are looking for the full transparency down the supply chain. They want to know where every one of the dollars that they're spending with a brand, even a financial services startup or company. And I think that is a big pivot. That is not something this industry has ever had to really contend with.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge pivot. And coming from retail, where a number of brands started to offer up that kind of transparency around, where's the product coming from, who's building it, how much are they getting paid, how much water and carbon is being used. They created that sort of awareness around trust and transparency when it comes to their supply chain. And now that expectation is beginning to shift over into the financial payments world, it's a really interesting pivot. But we know introducing this solution and offer even amongst our own coworkers, the number of millennials and Gen Z who said, I would love that. I would jump on that product right away. They have a real awareness and a real interest in ensuring that they have visibility. And so that's something we need to think about going forward.
We run an innovation internship with business school, and of 13 teams who recently competed in something that Maegan and I were involved with, those teams were asked, what does modern loyalty look like? And in many instances, it was inextricably tied to payment of things. But 8 or more out of those 13 had something environmental, something social, something governance oriented, not as like a barnacle off to the side, but as like a core part of the value proposition. And I think that is a step change.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more on the payments front related to the last two topics. I think as new infrastructure goes in across the various countries around the world, we've seen a lot of work in different markets in Europe, Canada, the US. There are a lot of new experiences that people are having. We run our gas tanks sort of down to empty. When you have a battery in your car, you tend to want to keep it full. Like, it's a very different psychology. And so the topping up outside of the home has become kind of a new thing that people are contending with. That needs to be paid for every single time. We're seeing those networks start to act almost like cellular networks where they're creating partnerships. We're seeing the payment be so inextricably linked to the experience that you're having at said charger, on said charging pad, et cetera, et cetera. But I just think there's a lot more opportunity that is starting to materialize in what looks like a distant industry in automotive but is actually coming kind of squarely back into the payments landscape and the payments territory. If one of the hallmarks of loyalty has been, gas, groceries, et cetera, we've got some provinces in Canada, we've got some states in the US that are well over indexed on EVs, and customers are starting to spend and vote with their values. Okay, so let's get into some other currencies. This is the part that's going to get wild. This is where subprime retail and all kinds of new terms have cropped up. Let's set the table a little bit and then jump into some of the examples, Meg.
Yeah, I mean, no question. This has been a space of really rapid evolution, especially over the past 18 months. Buy now, pay later, which was this little thing off to the side, I would say, when pandemic started, suddenly just escalated. And I mean, at this point, it seems like it's the snake eating its own tail almost, and we'll get into that. But also all of these consolidation opportunities and efforts around, cart linking and profile linking and receipt linking and, this connectedness, this ability to tokenize my data from one into another program to create ease and efficiency and greater value for me. These are all things that are now influencing decisions even about where to shop and not even how to pay. The payment cycle is actually starting to lead the decisions around where to shop. And this is where we start with Afterpay, and this layaway is the new loyalty, which I can't help but saying makes Kmart roll over in their grave. But what we thought was so fascinating about the earnings call from Afterpay was actually their conversation around how they were outpacing social media channels on actually driving customers to the brands that were participating with Afterpay. They were the funnel by which people were entering the decision process and therefore deciding which brands to shop with based on whether or not they had Afterpay. So they're an affiliate site like Rakuten. Yeah. And this kind of shift in behavior where payment has moved from the end of the purchase decision to the beginning of the purchase decision is such a significant shift that, everybody has to be paying attention, I think, at this point.
That was the tension we were talking about earlier. When I'm out in the physical world, I'm tapping, it's in my phone, I'm scanning my palm, if we go back to the Amazon story. The payment mechanism is getting sort of further and further out of sight or intermediated. And at the same time, here it is cutting to the front of the line and being like, do you only want to go shopping at places that take Afterpay? We can do that for you. Let me curate that for you. And so it's like the tail wagging the dog at the same time the dog is sort of like disappearing and evaporating. And I think, Afterpay will continue to pull, and solutions like it, right? Affirm and all of the PayBright and all the lookalikes, they're going to continue to pull some amount of transactions, especially for younger consumers, into an obfuscated place where that data is no longer easily understood now, gated for access. There's all kinds of dynamics to this. And then we saw them create the loyalty program.
Yeah. So now they're going to offer you loyalty value for paying your installment payments on time, which was the whole value benefit of using Afterpay to begin with. So really interesting to see that they feel like they now need to recognize and reward you for doing the behavior that actually was the value of what they were offering. But here they are. Now, we think this is also in part a play into the physical retail space. So really easy to go digitally through Afterpay's solution and use that as your shopping gateway online. More challenging for them when they think about the physical shopping space and returning to physical in-person shopping, where they still want to be top of mind. But in line with this, they're also offering ways to help you understand your spending behaviors and be more responsible. And yet this is all really an unregulated portion of debt that people are potentially taking on by using this solution. So sort of feels like they're trying to incent people to do what the whole value proposition was in the first place. And we're going to help you be more financially responsible by giving you visibility to your spending, which is kind of against why you were using us to begin with.
I think there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of intricacy and a lot of nuance. What I find most interesting about this whole Afterpay portion of the discussion is just the degree to which consumers are flocking to flexibility around how they pay for things, less consistent incomes, gig economy, all of those things, and maybe this loyalty program is an indication that, like, well, those accounts that we are allowed to tap into that were totally permissioned by these users, sometimes they get empty and they don't make the third payment, and so that thus we're going to create a carrot versus interest, which was a stick. And I see the reinvention of fees, not too far down the road with a bunch of this. Okay, let's keep moving. We've got probably another 8 or so topics to get through. If you've got questions, please throw them in the Q&A. Maegan and I will try and either pick them off as we go or tackle them head on. Let's talk about the UX choices for new consumers around financial services.
Yeah, this is one of those, great UX potential experience, but wrong customer segment opportunities, unfortunately. This relaunch of the HBC card with Neo in a COVID environment was intended to make it easy for their cardholders to switch over. You could do it all online. You could do it all digitally. The challenge is that their 2 million cardholders were primarily from older generations. And so when they were being asked to send a selfie and a picture of their government ID in as validation, they balked. They were like, I don't think I'm comfortable with this. Why would I have to do this? So while we see younger consumers do this without blinking an eye and thinking it's a perfectly normal way to set up a credit card or a bank account or a number of other things, you do have to be mindful of the customer set. And this is one of the challenges that they have. This customer set is actually not comfortable with this kind of interface.
Yeah, I think you said it right. UX, potentially mismatched audience. Was hoping maybe for a different reaction under a pandemic kind of premise, but an interesting learning no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that we talk about the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, and some of the loyalty landscape in the UK and in Canada in particular is fairly mature. We see a lot of that stuff then transfer into the United States. What do you want to call out about Vantage? And then maybe we'll move to some of the other things RBC has been up to that are starting to edge in other directions.
Yeah, Vantage in the Canadian market is the first entry into enterprise loyalty for a major bank. And I mean, this is a significant size institution. And so what they've done here is really link the rewards opportunity across all engagements that you might have with the bank. And so it's combining your savings value, your credit card value, your opportunity to utilize other services and benefits with the bank, all under this one umbrella of Vantage. And so, for a consumer, it gives them the opportunity to get more value, to ensure that they're going to have a good experience by being this known customer across all of these engagements with the bank.
Yeah, I think this is interesting on a couple of levels. The P&L distinctions between, a cards group and, the deposits portion of a bank, the mortgages and other things. These can be real kind of stumbling blocks within organizations to be able to figure out how to play together. How do the P&L puts and takes work around this stuff? This is, an institution just moving forward and going, well, that's not customer centric. Customer doesn't care about our divisions. We've got to find a way to transfer more value and convey more appreciation for consolidation with us. Like the confidence language from earlier. Is there anything you'd call out on this page before we move to Ventures?
I think it really is, often the expectation of customers with a bank is that you are siloed, that you have to go through the process of identifying yourself and giving personal information with each interaction that you have in a different department. And this is really solving for that customer pain point to say, we will know who you are across any interaction with the bank. And I think for most customers right now, this isn't a very rich offer, honestly, when we break it down. But for most customers, it's just that ease of experience of being known across every interaction.
Yeah, the dividend is is a little further to the background. The ease of it is all forward. I know we've kept our eye on RBC Ventures for a while. Their desire to go beyond banking and sort of branch into other parts of people's lives is evident in a lot of the things that they've been doing in the initiative. So if you haven't checked them out, I would check them out. What's most interesting to us, I think, is you can see all of the priority segments, new to the country, i.e. doesn't have established relationships with the financial institution and might need things. That's the Arrive app. You could look at, if I go on that bottom line, looking for a home, moving, taking care of a property and being the primary sort of caretaker of a property. Consumers signaling that they're in either these sort of life stages or moments or states, et cetera, by being drawn to these things and then understanding what financial needs they have and what financial opportunity they might have for the bank is embedded in some of the data that comes out of the interactions through these apps. Run It Back is actually a return service for your Amazon and other packages through an affiliate to RBC Ventures. Owner is a way to suss out small business owners who are going to be in particular need of certain types of lending, certain kinds of services, et cetera, et cetera. But it just makes the registering of a new business or a startup or a side hustle way easier. And so like you can see them edge into, if the last story was about them breaking down the barriers and the silos within themselves, this is about reaching sort of a little bit further beyond. And I think consumers are willing to engage with a lot of these utilities, and that's what they are, new utilities for their modern lives of owning vehicles, of starting up side hustles, of looking for a new place to rent, et cetera. And it all gets paid for. And one of the things that Maegan and I have been paying special attention to is just the almost standardization of receipts over the course of the pandemic. Thank you to Shopify. Thank you to e-commerce in general. The consumer is now in possession, always has been in possession of the SKU level data of those transactions. Problem has been, it's been in a shitty format. It's been in a crinkly piece of paper in your pocket. And there's been solutions developed over the years by folks like Sensible and Snip and some of the other providers that you see here. We've seen Amazon just brazenly be like, just show me what else you're spending money on. Just send me the receipts. I'll give you $1 per receipt. We've seen all kinds of new instigations because that layer of the transactional data has been largely out of reach for networks, for issuers, for a lot of different parts of the payment ecosystem. And consumers are leaning in. If you can find utility and value for them, I think they're showing us in droves that they will lean in. They will unlock offers. They will be the recipient of additional bonuses and value in the way that RBC Vantage is doing it. And I just think like each of these solutions is also training consumers to volunteer that data. It's all first-party permissioned, even if some of that data is coming in from a third party to your organizations. And so I think, with every one of these services that gains traction, that gets momentum, that becomes a little bit more familiar, I'm going to Venmo you that. When that starts entering into the lexicon, I think it's also signaling that the underlying UX and human behavior is, I will give you this credential if you will give me that back in return. Utility, monetary value, ease, convenience, any of those things that Maegan was talking about earlier in the currencies. I mean, that compounds on this new set of expectations. And when it comes to kind of payments land and card worlds, et cetera, I think that there is a very, very new greenfield space opening up that consumers are readily wading into for all kinds of reasons. Meg, anything you'd add to some of the receipt linking and card linking and all of the account linking that is going on here before we move into some other fun crypto-y type spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just indicating that customers are willing to be known. They actually would like benefits of ease and convenience and, time savings, et cetera. And so we need to make sure we're purposefully thinking about ways we're building that into our loyalty strategies so that, someone isn't having to sign up for a partner's loyalty program alongside yours. They can sign up for both all at once. They can link those solutions together. They're looking for those opportunities. And so we need to ensure that we're thinking about them and we're delivering against them.
Yeah, I remember having this conversation with you. It had to be deep pandemic, where Shopify sent me a notification in the Shop app that said, well, why don't you plug in your Amazon credential? And I was like, huh, what? I mean, I guess that would be good utility because I'd see all of my packages in shipment, in transit, and understand what's been delivered and what hasn't. It got a little frenetic there in the middle of the pandemic. But I thought to myself, wow, they would then also be in receipt of all of the spend I'm making, not on Shopify sites. And it literally was 2 fields and the click of a button.
Yeah.
And it was all properly ULA'd and T&C'd and whatnot. And I just think as those UXs pop up in more places, we're going to see a wild way for brands to collaborate, payments providers, retailers, brands of all kinds to collaborate with one another to bring additional value that, each is only bringing some to the party, but the perceived value to the consumer is much higher.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about perceived value versus real value, shall we?
Yeah, the roller coaster that is crypto. It was funny. We felt like crypto was just on the cusp of they were just about to have legitimacy, and then things happened in the marketplace that seemed to pull the rug out a little bit. But they haven't gone away, and they're still in the news all the time. And there's no question we're seeing more and more that they are beginning to show up in payment spaces, but in loyalty spaces as well. And so solutions where cryptocurrencies are actually the product on the card you are earning and paying with, but also where you can actually earn them as your loyalty value back. And particularly for a younger consumer, this seems to be a real interest. Great call out there on the loyalty report, sharing that 44% of Americans are interested in receiving some sort of cryptocurrency as an alternative to traditional cashback cards. So definitely there's interest. Wild, it's still a Wild West space, no question. And I think we have a couple more slides on that. But we're seeing a big shift there.
And young consumers in particular are adopting, different payment activities, and they're looking, it seems, for different payment vehicles, which have ballooned in the marketplace, like at a rate that I've never seen before.
Yeah, I think the rise of debit is exactly that. It's a younger consumer who seems to be more interested in a debit solution than they were in a credit solution. And whether that's because, through the pandemic, they had limited credit access. And so they were looking for ways to pay for online purchases, and, debit-based solutions were available to them. No question, we're seeing their behavior really shift into debit. And debit is suddenly a key area of focus and of evolution as well. And so what we've got here is an example from Oxygen, where they're, offering up elements that have traditionally been on credit cards through a debit solution. There is a full tier-based value proposition associated. It's not just about your spend, it's also about your saving. It's about, how quickly you're paying things off. It's combination of spend and deposit behaviors that are driving your benefit back out of this debit solution. So interesting to see debit move into this space in a more meaningful way. We certainly have been seeing it, the value proposition of points, et cetera, come onto more and more debit cards. But this is the first time we're seeing sort of a true competitor to a credit card value proposition show up on a debit card solution.
Yeah, we can imagine that there would be points earned for keeping a particular float within these accounts. All of the sort of like minor behaviors that I think have gone largely kind of unrecognized in typical loyalty fashion. And if you combine this topic with the comment we made earlier about partnerships, look, there's a different set of economics that work in debit loyalty There's a few cards in some markets that show the sustainability of it. The value proposition can be tenable. But I think with partnerships coming in and being able to offload, for all intents and purposes, a lot of your reward cost to other partners simply looking for the right kind of customer, I think you end up being able to extend debit into some of these territories. Okay, we're kind of like into crypto, out of crypto, into crypto. I feel like that's how that market works anyways. The simplicity and the places that this is showing up. I mean, Wealthsimple has maybe cultivated a group of customers who are eager to be self-serve, hands-on, robo-invested, doesn't need another human being in the equation, et cetera. All of those things feel like sort of more modern notions of banking, saving, investing, and dealing with this currency. And so I think, Wealthsimple and other providers almost act to legitimize some of these new territories in a way that I think is, probably reciprocal. First in, and you legitimize it a little bit. Maybe you win bigger on this than your competitive set does. It's going to be a very interesting decade around this.
Yeah, and definitely a focus here on access. This is a consumer who's very interested, but not very necessarily savvy in the crypto space. And they want to test and learn. They want to try it on for size. And Wealthsimple has just created such an easy solution for them to engage in crypto for the first time, that they're really taking the opportunity to educate that consumer. And we've seen some really interesting research out of the UK where they said, I believe it was 2/3 of younger consumers are fascinated, like they super want to invest in things like cryptocurrency. I know, big statement there, super want to. Anyway, but they're also they're so interested in investing in cryptocurrency, they're actually willing to take on debt to do it. And so, once again, first mover status, break it down, make it easy and simple for me. There is no question a younger, millennial Gen Z consumer is very interested in this opportunity. And here's a way that they've made it really digestible for the consumer.
Yeah, let's tie this up with a couple of other modern takes on the algorithm, kind of learning you, being known, serving you without you having to tinker with it a lot. Citi recently issued a big campaign around this. I think, just even some of the language, your spending is trending. We've got so many things in the rest of our lives that are smart and can anticipate and don't have to be tended to. I think that has changed the fundamentals. I don't know that I've seen a lot of financial advertising that has 100% in the copy anywhere without 1,000 asterisks after it. So I think this is sort of new territory, getting to that new mindset. And that new mindset is one, Meg, you and I have imagined all of these walls and all of these barriers where the card construct is sort of hard coded into the plastic, as it were. Whereas as a consumer, sometimes I might want to earn points on this kind of transaction, but on a different transaction, I might like to earn cash. Going down the left side of things there's lots of ESG, CSR, DE&I kind of conversations that consumers are having with themselves about which brands are in their wallet or in their lives, and being able to sort of switch to those things and pay off kind of some of that portion of the value proposition. Carbon offsetting, carbon credits starting to get into rewards mixes to mix down the effective cost per point in some cases on classic programs is a real thing that's starting to take hold. And then everything you see down the right hand side of this card, the flexibility to pay for it, how I'd like to pay for it. The idea that if I card link to other cards so that you understand the rest of my financial spending patterns and behaviors, et cetera. All of the tech is out there and the UX is more and more adopted by consumers. And if you look at, a Capital One shopping, or you look at the way that Rakuten is probably lining things up, all of that kind of cart linking, what I talked about with Shopify and Amazon's credential, all of that account level information permissioned by the consumer to be kind of sucked, I'm using non-technical language, sucked out of those accounts and used, to personalize or cater, and then switching back and forth between when am I actually doing this with my money? When am I doing this with my lender's money? All of that, I think, creates expectations around toggle switches and apps installed, and it way more resembles how my smartphone has operated for 12 years, 15 years. And so I think we're seeing an appetite in consumers to get to these kind of constructs. And it takes a lot of infrastructure to set them up, but there's also a lot of infrastructure outside. And so we won't spend any time on the solutions around those things today. We're coming up on time. And I think, Meg, you and I have answered a handful of the Q&A questions seamlessly as our conversation unfolded. If you've got more curiosity, though, and you've got more interest, the Market Intel subscription is available on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. You can check that out by emailing info there. And stay tuned for a link to some of the content we unfolded at Bond Forums, which was a chance for 500 or 600 of our clients to get together and talk with each other and talk with us. And many of them were up on stage, as it were, sharing some of their learnings and their challenges in the marketplace. So we're happy to do that. We're happy to bring it to you. Thank you for joining Maegan and I through a little traverse through the payments landscape and all that is materializing. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Have a great day.